What is Holy Week and how does it tie into Lent? Well, Holy Week is what Christians call the week between Palm Sunday and Easter. It's the last week of Lent. In this third part of our Lent series, you'll get a chronology of the dramatic events as they unfolded so that you understand why Holy Week is so important to those who follow Jesus. Saturday and Sunday, Jesus heads toward Jerusalem, the holy city of the Jews and where the temple was. He reaches Bethany on Saturday, which is about 2 miles outside the city. He stays with his friends, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, hangs out with the people there and teaches them. On Monday, Jesus rides into Jerusalem on a donkey with a bed of palms covering the street while huge crowds of people wave other palms and shout, "Hosanna!" They think he's going to be crowned the Messiah and kick the Romans out of their land. Jesus has other plans, though. He visits the temple and then he goes back to stay in Bethany. Tuesday, Jesus goes back to Jerusalem. He curses a fig tree and then drives the merchants out of the temple courts, upsetting the economy that has been built around the sacrificial system. The religious leaders are furious. They've wanted to get rid of him for a long time. Now they plot more urgently than ever. Meanwhile, Jesus leaves Jerusalem again to stay somewhere for the night, probably Bethany. Wednesday, Jesus goes back to Jerusalem again and heads straight for the temple. Now the religious leaders can question him in front of everybody there. Keep in mind that the temple is a lot busier than usual because it's the week of Passover, so lots of people have traveled there to celebrate in the temple. The leaders don't succeed in trapping Jesus there, so he goes out to the Mount of Olives just outside the city. There he preaches and predicts that he will die in 2 days. Judas, one of Jesus' 12 main followers, plots with the religious leaders to betray Jesus and turn him over to them. Thursday, Jesus and the disciples prepare the Passover meal and celebrate it together. He's still trying to explain what's going to happen and pours his love into them at this meal. But try as they might, they really don't get it. What he's saying is beyond anything they've ever known or believed. After dinner, Jesus takes Peter, James, and John out to the nearby garden to pray. He knows he'll be killed soon and pours out his heart to God. Though he's in extreme agony, anticipating what's to come, he willfully accepts his assignment from God. Meanwhile, Judas has gone back to the leaders to let them know where Jesus is. They come and arrest him in the garden. He's taken to court, tortured, and humiliated. Friday, early in the morning, between Thursday and Friday, really, Jesus goes through a series of trials. Improper witnesses, uncorroborated testimony, the trials are held in secret, and they don't care. The Jewish leaders are so worried about what Rome will do to squash their remaining rights if they get a whiff of what smells like rebellion that they just want Jesus gone. They could stone him for religious reasons, but they don't have a leg to stand on there. The people would know it wasn't true. So they grit their teeth and rely on the Romans to convict and kill Jesus. But the Romans don't seem to want anything to do with him. Finally, after back and forth a few times, the Romans get tired of it and agree to crucify him. After all, what's one man in the scheme of things? And if that will keep the peace, fine. Before they do that, though, the Romans torture him. He's whipped within an inch of his life, and then he's forced to carry his cross through the streets. They put him up on the cross around 9 o'clock in the morning. He dies at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, which is before sundown when Passover starts. He's buried later that day by some of his disciples who own a tomb nearby. Saturday. Today's the Sabbath, and the Passover's being observed. No one goes anywhere except to the temple. The Passover lambs are sacrificed for the sins of the nation. Meanwhile, the Jewish leaders want to make sure that Jesus' disciples don't try to take his body away, even though it's Passover. And since they can't go anywhere, they ask the Roman guards to watch the tomb, which they do. Sunday. 2 women go to the tomb to anoint Jesus' body. They weren't able to do that before now because of the Passover, but the Passover's over. They get to the tomb and find Jesus isn't in it. An angel tells them that he's risen from the dead. They rush back to where the other disciples were hiding out, and Jesus appears to them. He's risen. That is the timeline of events as they are written about in the Bible. And immediately after that, the followers of Jesus repeated the story and started to create practices and ceremonies around these events. Those practices and ceremonies eventually became known as Holy Week. The Holy Week days most celebrated in the Western Christian Church are Palm Sunday, when we celebrate the fact that Jesus came into Jerusalem on the donkey, Holy or Maundy Thursday, which is the Last Supper, Good Friday, Jesus' death, and Easter, Jesus' resurrection. The church often celebrates these events by reenacting them, waving palms, hosting a Passover supper, washing feet, or carrying a cross. The letter to the Philippians in chapter 3 says this: I want to know Christ, yes, to know the power of his resurrection and participation in his sufferings, becoming like him in his death, and so somehow attaining to the resurrection from the dead. The more we experience what Jesus went through, like arriving in Jerusalem with crowds of people praising him only to have the crowd turn on him a few days later, or eating one last meal with his disciples and pouring himself into them knowing they still don't quite get it, or being tried, beaten, tortured, and killed in the most horrific way while also abandoned by almost all of his followers. The more we experience that, the greater our joy when we get to Easter. We see in full living color how he didn't cheat death, he conquered it. He showed us he is Lord even of death. Death has been swallowed up in victory, Paul writes to the church in Corinth. Picture the fiercest, biggest dragon breathing fire over the whole earth, just disappearing from the sky in a puff of smoke as it gets swallowed by the victorious Jesus. That's why we call this week holy. And this week is the culmination of Lent, the time we had set aside to meditate, detox from our usual habits, to be closer to God. Doing that makes us more involved with the story as it's retold. We feel Jesus' sorrow when the people don't understand, and we see ourselves in those people. We feel his pain when he's betrayed, arrested, tried, and tortured, and abandoned and killed. And we feel the joy and power of the resurrection. All because we took the time to really sit with the story, listen to God's heart. No matter how close we are to Holy Week and Easter, there's still time to enter in. If you want to experience God, you have to do something different from what you normally do. There's so much noise that drowns his voice out, and our lives are no exception. You'll find in the description or the comments below what you can do to enter into the season of Lent, whether you know Jesus or not. Jesus is waiting with open arms. All you have to do is show up. Let him lead you through participating in his suffering and the power of his resurrection. And then, why not go to church and celebrate that resurrection with others who believe? Join the chorus of people who have celebrated this great truth for more than 2,000 years.